This is the story of a child who transformed a family that transformed a generation, and how fame transformed Michael Jackson. This is the Thriller Effect. Thriller was released in 1982. 40 years later, kids who were not even born are creating viral content on the basis of Thriller's iconography. He was a child phenom whose professionalism was apparent in the very beginning. The 18 months that fell between 1957 and 1959 were busy. The pop world shifted on its axis. Alan Freed's Big Beat Show resulted in a riot. Freed's arrest,
I'm under subpoena here,
and anti-rock music legislation passing in New Jersey, California, and several other states. Elvis enlisted. Jerry Lee Lewis married his cousin. Chuck Berry was arrested, and Little Richard found Jesus, thus removing 4 threats to society. For the next few years, pop music lost its edge. Fabian, Ricky Nelson, Pat Boone, and Johnny Mathis emerged. Rebels were contained. The Beatles were taking the stage for the first time at the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and a 15-year-old Jimi Hendrix bought his first electric guitar. In the summer of '58, in the American Midwest, 3 future icons were born. Prince Rogers Nelson in June, Madonna Louise Ciccone in August, and later that August, in Gary, Indiana, Michael Joseph Jackson.
Had we known at the price that we would have to pay, we would have stayed in Gary, Indiana in that 2-bedroom house.
It was 5 of us, and our last name was Jackson, so.
So we were playing a retirement home.
We did a wedding, the Jackson brothers.
In Gary, Indiana.
A little old white lady came up to us. She said, "What's your name?" I said, "Well, we really don't have a name. Well, our last name is Jackson."
We're going by Jackson Brothers because we're brothers.
She said, "You don't have a name." "Well, it's 5 of you, so why don't you just call yourself the Jackson?"
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Music have always been in our home. It's always been there. When Joe and I married, we used to sing together all the time.
Yeah, well, I guess Jackie and my oldest sister, they were born.
Tito, Jermaine, Latoya, Marlon.
So after then, another kid was born.
I used to dance to the rhythm of the washing machine.
Michael was about 12 months old. We had a rickety washing machine. She would make noises. And he was in the kitchen when I'm washing, dancing to the rhythm of the washing machine.
I remember those stories. Every sound around me seemed to start making rhythms and dancing, and I seemed to record in my head.
I knew then he had a lot of rhythm.
Imagine 9 kids living in a 2-bedroom house.
Our house was the size of a 2-car garage. Tito and I slept at the top, Michael and Martin slept in the middle, and Jackie was at the bottom.
We lived on a street called Jackson Street.
Growing up in Gary, Indiana, that was home. And my father was always honest.
My father always prepared for the family, and as well as my mother. We weren't wealthy, but we weren't poor.
My mother worked at Sears. My father worked in the steel mill.
Modern steel mills are large places. They employ men and women of all races. Shipping convenience and the need for lots of water are 2 reasons why so many steel mills are located on the shores of the Great Lakes.
Man, I went to the steel mill, saw where my father worked. Man, they lit up that steel door and all that heat and fire came out. And I said, oh my God, how does he work in a place like this all the time?
A long time ago, he had a group called Falcons, and they traveled around Chicago and Missouri, small places, but they never made a record or anything like that.
Joe Jackson's dream was to play guitar in a band. The Falcons ended when vocalist Thornton Pookie Watson joined the doo-wop group, the Spaniels. The Spaniels signed to VJ Records, a Gary, Indiana record label. Ironically, the president of VJ Records, Ewart Abner, would sign the Jackson 5 to Motown 20 years later.
Raising kids instead of writing songs, you know. Still thinking about having them involved in show business.
First we started in Gary, Indiana, So we just started listening to the radio.
I used to watch James Brown on television. Whenever he would really start to dance, they would be on a close-up, and I couldn't see his feet, so I could watch and learn.
But one day our television broke down.
And the guy was late fixing it.
We didn't have anything really to do, like in the morning times.
My mom was a great singer, and we used to hear her sing around the house.
She'd be washing the dishes, and we'll be drying them, and she would sing this song, and we would start making harmony.
So we started singing country western around the house with our mom. Yeah, you sing these country western songs, and we would join her.
We started making harmony.
those country western songs. Cotton Fields Back Home.
Sing it, Jermaine. When I was a little bitty baby, my mama used to rock me in the cradle. In the fall, cotton fields back home.
The boys were singing. Michael was way over in the corner. He just joined in perfect harmony. Joseph and his brother.
Every day they would come over playing great music.
They played guitars and they sang. There was always a guitar lying around.
Joseph had warned him, don't play my guitar now.
Don't you touch my guitar when I'm at work.
He didn't want nobody to touch his beautiful guitar. I mean, it was something that he cherished and he laid around as a memory piece.
Tito got Joe's guitar out of the closet and played it.
Tito would play, and eventually we would start singing to the playing. We would sing old folk songs like Cotton Fields Back Home and Ray Charles stuff and James Brown.
I was playing this guitar for months and
the string broke. There was no way of hiding that he had his guitar.
I didn't know how to change the string.
We asked Mom to play my string. And she says, well, before you get upset at Tito, you should hear him play.
He got so mad. When he found out Tito was playing it, he whipped him.
He took care of my ass and said, show me what you know.
And he meant it.
So I'm playing and crying.
Tito started really playing.
He's better than you.
That's what she told him. My father was shocked.
He looked at me and said, dang, you playing just as good as me.
Joseph said nothing else to him. You can play it.
So he gave it to me. Jackie and Jermaine in there, we were harmonizing.
The group started with myself, Jackie and Jermaine. Michael and Marlon, they used to beg to be in the group. We used to tell them, this is big boy stuff.
We hadn't done anything out in the public.
Raynard Jones actually put the Jackson 5 together. Raynard Jones went to school with the oldest Jackson boy, Jackie Jackson, at Roosevelt High School.
Before even their father.
I put Michael Jackson on stage for the first time in his life.
Not really. He's not my age. He hung out with my brothers.
And I had a drum, and Tito had a guitar, and Ray and I had a guitar, and we just kind of just come over in the basement from time to time and just, make music.
At the time, we were just neighborhood kids. At the time, I was playing piano and drums when we first started the group. Raynard Jones, House on 23rd Monroe. It was like mainly instrumental group, and then we went into making it into a singing group.
Joe Jackson did not even know it.
When they would come up as kids, there was a lot of bad things happening in the area.
Jackson spent a lot of time inside. Those were Joseph's roots.
But I had to know what was going on, keep them out of trouble.
We weren't allowed to go visit or stay all night with other kids.
If I thought that it was time to practice, I could whistle and it would come to the window and then walk over to my house.
If you wanted Michael to do something, say stand at a certain part of the stage or sing a certain song and he didn't feel comfortable with it, he wouldn't do it. But once we made Michael comfortable, then he displayed all of his talents.
Michael was only playing the bongos. Jermaine was the lead singer. He was playing bongos, beating the bongos while we were singing. And Michael came in playing the Quaker oatmeal boxes. He called himself playing the bongos.
He and his brothers won a talent show at Roosevelt High School right behind their house.
After Raynard put the group together and Joe found out that the group was performing, that's when Joe Jackson took over.
I decided to deal with the boys as much as I possibly can as far as rehearsing them.
He saw some talent there and he got a plan to make a group.
If we want to have all these kids, they got to be able to do something in life.
He said, I want you to learn every song on the radio. So that's what I started doing.
I gave Jermaine bass guitar lessons when my father bought his second guitar. He started playing the guitar that I was sneaking from my father. So he was playing bass on the guitar.
I was 5 years old and started singing around the house.
Michael was unique. His pitch and his tone of his voice.
My father got a new car, and you know how you open the car door and the buzzer sounds? Mike actually got harmony with the buzzer. How in the world could he do that?
At that time, Jermaine was singing a lot of lead. I was the lead singer first, and then Michael came in.
I mentioned to Joseph, Michael, he has a pretty nice voice for lead. He just said, oh no, let Jermaine sing him. I don't think he can do it. The school had a program. Michael was singing solo, Climb Every Mountain. Joe's father wanted to hear him, and Michael started singing.
He tore it up, man. We couldn't believe our mouths flew open.
I looked around. Joe's father was crying.
We rushed him home, tell him he's in the group. Mom said, me too.
Michael, you used to couldn't keep him still at all. He was always dancing or moving,
Michael started coming out doing this James Brown sort of thing, And so wait a minute.
James Brown and spinning and
maybe
dancing.
He should be
all
up
this
front.
stuff.
I like Sammy Davis Jr. and James Brown. I just watch him on television. I do most of his dancing on stage, and I just like the way Sammy sings.
He was fast, he could move real fast on stage. And When Michael came into the picture, the whole thing started changing.
He had that energy, he had the wits about him. Even though Michael was the youngest, he stood out.
My mother said, you know, he should be leading.
And after they were going out singing, people started responding to Michael.
Then we started doing all these talent shows. And we would win these talent shows.
We would do talent shows. We would win every talent show. Our house was loaded with trophies.
My father started rehearsals every day after school. Other kids would be outside playing.
There was a big baseball park behind our house. We would hear the roaring of the crowd and the kids eating candy and popcorn. We would be inside rehearsing.
People would look in from the window and watch.
Neighbors be telling us to be quiet, making all that noise over there. You ain't going nowhere.
And they would tease us, oh, you're doing this, you're not going to get nowhere. But we just rehearsed every day.
And we say, just wait and see, you'll see.
We kept rehearsing and sweating and rehearsing.
Catherine would work with him when I'm at work, you know, still operating the crane. When I got off from work, I would rehearse them, sometimes 2 hours.
Father, it was really, really tough.
I remember my mother allowing my brothers and sisters to play outside, and then they'd see my father's car coming down the street and run into the house. Joseph's coming, Joseph's coming. And pick up the instruments and start playing like they were rehearsing all along.
Like in that area, everybody, they tried to make a group, but a couple of weeks later, they would break up. We the main one that stayed together.
We couldn't understand why somebody could be so mean and so strict. It was crazy.
If she hit me, I would hit her back, which was terrible. I would run around the house and hide, but I would really get it more than anybody.
Michael never got spanked. They could never catch him, brother. He was quick.
He was this little kid seeing us getting spanked, and he was saying, am I next? It would frighten him because he's the youngest. We didn't understand his vision to keep us out of trouble and to get us out of here.
It's always going to be rough when there's only one working, and we sacrificed a lot.
He spent all the money on instruments for the boys.
There was a lot of instruments to buy, and they cost a lot of money. Drums, guitars, amplifiers, and I had all this stuff piled up on top of the Volkswagen microbus.
My mother, she always made all of our clothes. My mother would sew and stitch everything. Everything we wore before really making it at Motown.
Our main music that we based around was Motown. We used to do all the Temptation records and the Supremes and some James Brown records, and I would, do the lead.
One of the songs Michael used to sing was called Skinny Legs and All. And Who Want the Woman with the Skinny Legs? And he would go out in the audience and he'd go grab a lady out. Who want the woman with the skinny legs? And don't you worry about a doggone thing at all. He was just a little kid. People thought it was so cute how he would do it.
We would come on amateur hour. These people had like a local record going. So we would win the trophy every time.
I do a lot of shows around Chicago, nightclubs, the Regal Theater.
We would gig on the weekdays after school. Most of the time we had rehearsals prior to doing the gig.
We would come home from school and hit to the instruments.
We rehearsed and go to that gig about 7 o'clock in the evening in Chicago.
When we played shows in Chicago, people would throw money on stage.
We would only make like $15 a night doing the show. Most of our money was made people throwing money on the floor. You'd be up there dancing, all these quarters and dollars would be thrown at you, and you're doing splits and picking up money and putting it in your pocket.
We're doing splits left and right. We get to keep the money.
Our pockets were so loaded with money that we couldn't keep them up. We'd be loaded with money.
Get back home somewhere around 1 or 2 in the morning, get up and go to school. We were going to Wisconsin and New York trying to make a name for ourselves. It wasn't just an overnight success. It took a long time, 5-6 years before the Motown days. We did what they call the chillin' circuit.
We used to travel from Gary to Chicago, and then from there to Apollo.
You would do a show and there would be 20 to 30 acts. It was very much like vaudeville. You would do just a certain amount of songs.
And when we did the Apollo, we had a rivalry between us and the 5's stair steps.
We would come on amateur hour, like at the Apollo. James Brown sitting on the wings and learning. We used to have to go on stage after him because he would come on, see nothing like that kind of emotion, feeling. They were like in a trance, and they had the audience in the palm of their hand. Jackie Wilson and all those different great entertainers. We played the theater for so long. Best experience in the world.
Not only them, the OJs, Shylights.
There was Denise Williams, Earth, Wind & Fire was on some of these shows. It was Gladys who discovered us first.
I started Michael Jackson.
They started with me.